Hello, welcome to this video. My name is Alberto Marquez and I'm going to talk about how to create graphs using ggplot in R. This is not an exhaustive video, this is just an initial set of ideas. My recommendation to you is that you begin by just copying exactly the syntaxes, because it is not all very intuitive and I find it not to be very, I would say, consistent in terms of how every single aspect of creating plots is managed in R, at least using this library. And from there you can explore and see what you can find and maybe use other sources. So before we go into the details, let me mention that you can download a data visualization cheat sheet with ggplots. It is a 2-page set of information, and there are others that will be available for. And if I zoom in into this, you can actually see a little bit of the syntaxes associated with using this tool. Essentially, as you can see here, for purposes of the syntaxes, you will write, you will make an assignment into a variable, and what you're going to assign is ggplot and then the parameters of the data that you will have. This is the data frame, and then the parameters would be after the keyword a's for aesthetic. I don't know why they choose that descriptor, but anyways, it is what it is, and they use that. And then after you type in that A, you can add a geometry. The nature of the geometry that you add will add, for instance, a polygon or a rectangle or a ribbon. Also, there are other potential variables, and here you see it's a different form. It doesn't have to be named C, then it can be named anything you want. But the point is that if you have something that looks like ggplot and then the data frame and then one variable inside that A is parameter for aesthetic, you can generate, for instance, a histogram, right? So you would have to type in all these plus geom_histogram and then the parameters. So that's what we're going to show and demonstrate now. There are other, this is for one variable, but there are other situations in which you can require or express your data in a different way. For instance, if you have 3 variables, you can have contour plots, you can have heat maps. If you have 2 variables, you can make a regression analysis. You can use quantile analysis. If you have discrete and continuous, you can create your box plots. And so there's all these different functions you can create. So again, what you do is you type in ggplot and extract the information from the data frame in this format, and then select the nature of the printout or the plot you want to have. In this setting, there are other things you can do, like stats, scales, coordinate systems, and faceting. All of these allow you to do different things. So for instance, I'm going to zoom even more for purposes of explaining. If you have, what these represent is that you could have in this region here, what these represent is that you can have multiple histograms. Each one of these rectangles could become a histogram of different variables, or it could become different scatter plots with regression analysis for different variables. So it's a way to present and arrange multiple variables so you can make it very visually attractive to put together a series of complex. So having said that, let me go to the examples I prepared for you. and we're gonna build one at a time so to express this set of things. I have them commented. Before you can actually run the package, you need to install it as a library. I have done so for mine. Here in RStudio, you can just go to ggplots and select it, and that should install it. Then you execute it as library, right? You would have to call the library. And right now I did it as a comment here, but in reality you can do it here, right? And now we're ready to execute. So I'm going to execute from the script. So I have a series of data frames that I am pointing to. Here you have the first one, and I'm going to increase the font. So I am using the ggplot and then defining the data. The data I have is in a vector that I have previously read from a CSV file. And I am saying that the first X in my case, represent the X in the X-axis in the plot, and the second X represents the column name in the data frame. For some reason I didn't know this, and I used the letter X, so I can keep X. It's not a problem. RStudio identifies it. And then I am going to create a histogram. The characteristics of my histogram is that I want the lines to be painted in black. The fill of the rectangles in that create the histogram, I want it painted in green. And I can specify the bandwidth of each one of the classes. That helps me control how the histogram looks. I'm going to play with it a couple of times. And alpha represents the transparency of the vectors in such a way that if you may have more things to present in the graph, like for instance the grid, you can actually compare it against the grid because the rectangles in the front are sort of transparent. So in order to execute this, after I send all of these, and these, like, there are two structures, one for the ggplot and then the plus sign for the geometric histogram or geometric histogram. After I do that, I'm storing everything into a data frame, and then I just send to print that. So I execute this code, and here you have it. And if I change any one of these parameters, say for instance the alpha, I change it to 0.90, and then re-execute, you see it's not as transparent anymore. If I want to change the bandwidth, I think the default is 1. If I want to change the bandwidth, now I'm going to have 10 times more classes. Let me see if that's the case. There you go. I have so many classes that in order to depict the lines, I can no longer have the colors. Let's say that I go the opposite direction and I do 25, and I execute. Now the bins are wider, and of course now I can see the color green. And then you can select the other parameters. To these graphs, there are ways to create change the names of the labels of the vertical and the horizontal axis to add a title, a histogram. We can do that. Now I'm going to go and make these as comments, so they're no longer workable. And then I'm going to erase these graphs from my area. But before that, let me say that you can export these graphs as an image or as a PDF, or just copy to the clipboard in order for you to include them in, say, your report in Word or something like that. Alright, so I'm just going to, with this little brush, clean that space. I can execute this one. Let me just execute and then I'll explain. Here is one that creates just a line instead of the detail histogram. And I have they call these the density graph. I have it set up with this particular selection, but you can change it to anything you want. For instance, the size is the thickness of the line. I can make it maybe not as thick to make it more attractive. And the yellow and the cyan color are not my preference. So let's say I change that to blue, like it, but let's try it red. So let's just execute. Of course, the only thing I change, if you look at these, I use exactly the same statement for the part of ggplot, but instead of using geometric histogram, I use geometric, and then the parameters associated to, and then I send that to a different data frame, and then print that data frame. It doesn't have to be this combination of letters or anything like that. That is just something that I was testing. So you execute the program with source, and now you see the line got thinner and you have colors. Very good. Let's continue. First, making these just comments, and let's see what else I have. Erase these comment markers, and I have the ggplot is the data. Now I don't specify what's the content in the data. However, all I do is I use something that is called geometric QQ, and it's asking for the X. And let me execute it to see how it looks like. Execute, and it's just a line. It's a very quick graphic that you. In this case, I am comparing the distribution to. For more information about these graphs, of course, you can. Finally, let me see. Is that the last one? No, I have a couple more. All I want to do is to demonstrate what you can do. Of course, you can change the colors, change the size. Again, the size is probably too big, and then this is more attractive. So it is important that you select another quick combinations to improve graphs. Let's see what we have. In the next one is the geometric box plot, and for this you need to have some of the information has to be categorical, meaning classes, that is not continuous, and the other would be continuous information. Box plots, if I execute the same, it didn't work because I didn't do print. Now I have that, and now you see the box plot for the information, including the whiskers and the outliers. And of course, you can change some of the parameters as I did for the others. Let's see what else. Well, the graphs I can demonstrate. If you have parameters in your data frames, like I do here, 2 columns with 2 different data, I can send those to some other form and independently send them to what it's called a quick plot. Notice that this is the only one that does not have the command ggplot. How did I know about this? I checked in the cheat sheet. The cheat sheet is very useful for you to learn and figure things out on your own, because here I found that if you don't have ggplot, qplot, splot, it is safe. All those commands are okay. This video is getting too long. Let's hurry up. So here I just read 2 of them, and the net effect. Now you see if I have included to include the point and the line, and there is a line connecting all the dots in a sequential format. But if I only want the points, then just select points, execute, and you only get the points. Similarly, you can only get the line if so you want it. So that was quick plot. Finally, you can create functions and lines that delimit your graphics. So what we can do is, in this case, it's just a straight line for which it has an intercept and a slope. In this case, the intercept, I set it up at 0, the slope at 0.1, the thickness of the line is at 4. Let me change that to 2. The color of the line is blue, and again, It starts with ggplot, and the line in itself is somehow not related to the data because it just depends on the intercept and the slope. So of course you can compute what should the intercept and the slope be based on some formula that depends on the values on your data, maybe the mean, maybe the standard deviation, and other factors. And once you have them, you can send it to print, and this is an example of that outcome. It's just a straight line with the intercept at 0. All right, so I hope you have an idea now of how ggplots work. It is by no means extensive. It is a matter of spending time, a lot of time, figuring out. This is the video. I hope you find it useful, and I'll see you next time.